If you're out there working hard, wondering what's next, and feeling frustrated and unclear because you're not getting the right answers, this podcast is for you. Stop guessing and start building a future you actually want to be a part of. Welcome to the Be Future Ready podcast, hosted by Sarah Price, brought to you by Living Your Strengths. And it all starts now.
Today I have someone with me who I'm genuinely excited for you to meet, because when she and I get in a room together, something magical always happens, and we always end up in a conversation that I wish more people could hear. Dr. Molly Geil is a PhD psychologist, and she's also my partner in some work that we've been building together, but we're not talking about that today. We're here to talk about something that affects almost every person I've ever sat across from in a hiring conversation or a coaching conversation, and honestly, almost every person Molly has ever worked with: confidence, and why everything you've been told about is probably wrong. Molly, welcome.
Thanks, Sarah. I'm really glad to be here with you today. Honestly, this is a great topic for me because I think we've confused people about confidence for a very long time. People I connect with who come into my world, my programs, all the time, they're saying things like, I need more confidence. And I always think, I don't actually believe confidence is the problem. I think confidence is a symptom because most people are not lacking capability. They lack safety, clarity, evidence, or connection to themselves. And Sarah, those are very different things. So I think we need to do a better job of helping people just identify what that word confidence means to them.
Yeah, and this is why I'm so glad to have you here today, because when I'm sitting across from a candidate, someone who's clearly qualified on paper, and then they fall apart in the interview, or they undersell themselves, or they don't even apply for the job in the first place, what do you think is actually happening? Because then they come back to me and they're like, oh, I messed it up. And then their confidence dips. And I'm not a psychologist, right? You are. So then I'm sitting there like, not only am I trying to prep them for the interview and get them ready for the interview, but then I have to lift them up back out, into like, be confident. And sometimes it's like I struggle with, okay, what can I tell you to make you feel better about going into this interview? And you're only talking about yourself, right?
Yeah, most people have a hard time talking about themselves, by the way, and you're trying to, prop them up a little bit. But what you're describing in those interviews is really something that I see with high capacity and high capability people all the time. Somebody can be extremely competent on paper. So you're thinking, gosh, you're smart, you're experienced, you're accomplished. And still they completely shut down when they start to feel evaluated, right? And that's the thing when you go, oh, I'm afraid of being exposed, right? Psychologists call this self-efficacy, right? It's your belief in your ability to execute in specific situations. So research has shown for decades, in fact, that self-efficacy predicts performance far more than raw talent does. So you're looking at this person on paper, but their self-efficacy is low, even though their skill level and what they bring to the table is so high. But here's the most important part. Competence and belief don't automatically travel together. And when someone perceives a situation as threatening, right? So it's like that fight or flight, socially, professionally, identity-wise, your nervous system is going to react first. So the brain essentially starts to prioritize protection over performance. So the person sitting in that interview, Sarah, they're no longer operating from the best part of themselves. They're letting stress take over. That cortisol rises, right? And their stress response is running the show. So what happens in the brain is that your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for articulating your thinking, your memory retrieval, your emotional regulation, your decision making, that partially goes offline under stress. And that's not weakness, that's biology. And I talk about that a lot because I think there's a lot of shame involved in that. And you think, oh, why did I mess that up again? But it's really a biological process. So often what you're seeing is not a lack of ability. You're seeing a person who is a very capable person, but they're in a state of threat.
Right. And it's so true, because that's why I tell clients that I work with, we've done your strengths, or we can do your resume or LinkedIn, but I need you to prep for the interview, right? Because even though you're only talking about yourself and that, it's just wild from where I sit, because I really see this at every level. And it's not just entry level candidates, right? I've watched senior leaders who've run teams of hundreds of people completely second guess themselves in a career transition, right? So it's just not a young person problem or a young adult problem. It's really a human problem, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. And honestly, you hit the nail on the head, because I believe that high achievers can struggle with this even more. Because when your identity becomes tied to being competent, uncertainty can start to feel dangerous to you. So let me give an example. Like, I see this all the time with women, especially because they're successful on paper, they're incredibly capable, but they're exhausted from performing or being competent for everyone else, right? It's like we are out there, doing all the things, and you can do all the things, you just can't do all the things at once. Um, and then, someone hits a career transition or a leadership shift. Maybe they're, looking at a promotion. They hit midlife, right? Perimenopause or menopause, burnout, motherhood, divorce, entrepreneurship, something that removes that external validation. And suddenly they think that they've lost their confidence. And that's the important part. They think they've lost their confidence. Usually they haven't lost capability at all. They're still the same person, but they've really lost that connection to themselves because of everything else that's going on.
Right. I think the thing that drives me crazy also, if we pause on young professionals for a second, is they know that there's so much competition out there. And Molly, we know this because, we've been talking for 2 years about it, and we built it into the Be Future Ready program, and we're both certified strength coaches. And I think for young adults going into the workforce and interviewing and then feeling like they didn't get the job, or they get that rejection email. And I find it fascinating because you really take rejection emails personally. And I explain it to them like, this is not personal. You have no idea what's happening on the other side. Maybe they had a referral. Maybe they already had someone in mind, right? Maybe you just didn't have a skill that they needed. And I focus on, let's just prep for the next one, and move it forward. But the advice people get sometimes, which is like, just be more confident. You know about yourself. This interview, you're just talking about yourself, or fake it till you make it, right? Or stand in that power pose. Like, I don't know. I was watching some YouTube video about it. It's like, before you go into this meeting, stand in this power pose. So I really want to ask you about that from a psychological perspective. And I think that advice, while well-meaning, might actually really be doing more damage than good. What do you think about that?
Yeah, but this is funny, because this is why I struggle with the whole fake it till you make it advice, right? Because your body knows when something's performative. So when you're acting in a way that, it's you're going to have cognitive dissonance, right? You're going to go, wait, that's not how I really feel. So why am I trying to behave that way? So
And then do you think you show up different?
Yeah, I do, for sure. And maintaining performance actually consumes enormous cognitive energy. So, standing in the power pose, fake it till you make it, that takes up a lot of energy. So instead of being present in the interview or whatever it is, thoughtful, connected to the person, really listening and hearing what they have to say, being curious, you're monitoring yourself. Like, how do I sound? Do I sound confident? Do I sound nervous? Am I saying this right? Like, is that what they want to hear? And then you're second guessing everything. And ironically, that self-monitoring is exactly what increases your anxiety. And then you kind of start to fall apart. There's also something else that happens that I think is really important. When people try to project confidence that they don't genuinely feel and it falls apart, it doesn't just feel uncomfortable, it feels exposing. Like, oh, they see me, they know who I really am. It's like that's why, that word imposter syndrome, right?
Yes, I was just going to say that.
So that's where that comes from. And it's like, oh my gosh, they saw through me. They know I'm not really this, that, or the other. And you start to second guess. And psychologically, that reinforces shame for everyone more deeply than the original challenge itself. So when you talk about someone who gets the rejection letter or, doesn't get the job or whatever that outcome is, it's like they focus so much on that outcome because it reinforces the shame more than the original, like, I'm not sure I have the confidence for this, right?
Yeah, well, then it really prevents them from applying to new things. And that's what I've seen, right? It's like your quote unquote confidence goes down because I've applied to 47 roles and I'm not hearing back. Or, Sarah, I'm so surprised because I applied to all these roles and I'm so qualified. I don't understand why I'm not getting any callbacks. So the lack of action and the lack of getting interviews or seeing momentum brings your confidence down. And then by the time I start working with people, it's more reactive than proactive. And I have to tell them, I'm a career coach and I'm here to help you understand your strengths and build a resume and get you positioned right on LinkedIn, and I'll coach you through prepping for an interview, but I'm not a psychologist, right? So I was like, I got to call Molly. Like, we have to talk about this because so much of it is just your brain, and then how you show up in the interviews. It's not just about you being qualified. It's about you positioning yourself the right way. So
Yeah. And you know what, Sarah, the research here matters too, right? It really does. Because a lot of people, you talked about the power pose, and there was actual research on the power pose. I don't know if you knew that, but it was wildly popular years ago. And it was like, stand like Wonder Woman for 2 minutes, and suddenly you become confident. Remember Wonder
yes, I
Woman
remember that.
with
No
her
joke. Yes.
right? So, but much of that research now has been challenged and it hasn't really replicated consistently. So now posture and physiology, absolutely, they definitely affect the emotional state, but also movement matters, breathing matters, sleep matters. Things like strength training, nutrition, all those things matter because you have to regulate your nervous system first before. And think about all these kids that are I was thinking about this yesterday because we were talking about something kind of funny. It used to be people would go out at work for long lunches. I'm not going to talk about what they did at those long lunches, but they did that. And we were like, how did they come back and work? And it was like, how could they possibly be as productive or whatever? Well, the thing is that they were taking a break, right? And they were being social and they were connecting. Now I see people, and I've been there and I've been dysregulated in my nervous system. So I totally understand this. They just work all day and they work through lunch and they never connect with anyone and they're constantly hooked up. And those things, that is going to really also interfere with someone's confidence when they get into a situation where they have to interact and be present and do all those things. So really there's no shortcut that replaces internal evidence. And what I mean by that, Sarah, is that practice that you're doing with someone is really important and it becomes almost critical now because we just don't get ourselves in situations like that as much where we have to talk and carry on a conversation and explain what we can do and who we are. And so then we forget those things, right? Because no one's ever giving us feedback about that. And we're not giving ourselves feedback about it.
Well, and then a whole another topic for young professionals and young adults is, and this is why we built Future Ready, right? Be Future Ready. But it's like we quarantined this age group during, and I want your thoughts on this as a psychologist, right? Like we quarantined this age group for 3 years during COVID in their most critical time of like social development. And then they come out of quarantine and here's all this social media that they're on and Snapchat and Instagram and all these things that they're just texting their friends about, right? And then so now they're behind a computer screen and now we give them AI. So how are we, when we talk about confidence, I mean, how are we possibly setting them up for success in an interview or to get a job when we tie in confidence to just being able to communicate?
Right. And I think that that is a real struggle, and the struggle is real on that. And we have to, as future, as leaders and as people who want to develop future leaders, we have to get real about the importance of interaction. And I was talking to someone the other day about AI, and I think AI is great. I mean, it's very functional and you can use it for so many things, but it doesn't replace humanity. And it doesn't replace that human interaction and how people, kind of connect with one another. So we have to help them rebuild confidence. And confidence is not a personality trait, it's a conclusion, right? Your brain's always asking you, have I handled hard things before? Can I trust myself here? Do I have evidence that I can figure this out? And we have to help these young professionals see those things, because when we don't give them the answers, right, then their nervous system takes over and they don't know how to react to it. So your nervous system is going to be the main thing that gives you feedback about that confidence, right? It's going to tell you like, you're good, you're safe, you're calm, you got this, you've been here before, you can do hard things. My daughter took a course in cold plunging, and I've been talking. I was
I didn't
talking
even know there was a course on cold
There's a
plunging.
course in cold
Oh,
plunging.
you just cold plunge, period.
Right. She was in Norway and there was a class on how to cold plunge,
Who
right?
even knew?
Who even knew?
Okay.
And they broke a hole in the ice, Sarah, and she had to get in the ice and, whatever, like really cold, right? But you know what I said to her after? I was like, now you can do hard things. Remember that, because your brain will always tell you, I can do hard things. And I can trust who I am. Think about the situations you've been in where you say, can I trust myself? And the answer is yes.
So talk about this for a second. We're talking about confidence. I know our brain is wired to always think negative because when we were caveman days, right, we needed to protect ourselves from like lions and tigers, right? So our physiology of our brain is always in the negative to protect ourselves. So in your opinion, from a psychology perspective, how is our brain functionality influencing our confidence?
Well, again, Sarah, that is such a great question, but it goes back to that same thing. It's like real confidence is built through your lived experiences, right? It's not like I'm going to tell myself like it's all good or whatever, because our brain is going to go back to, I'm not safe here. It's what we talked about in the beginning. Like the high capacity people get in there and they get so tied up in, I've just been exposed. Now they see who I really am. I knew like this is imposter syndrome for me. So those lived experiences, like putting yourself in that situation, in your example, having multiple times to practice the interview process is going to be really important, because then your brain is going to be secure in that. And it's going to be confident.
It has data to give
It has
the answers.
data to support, like,
Yeah.
I got this, I can do this. And, you talked a little bit about strengths. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's so important to know your strengths and lead with those, because that's going to help you to identify, these are the things that I know I do well. And here's how I'm going to approach this. And when you have evidence about that, and you've associated that with your lived experience, that's going to help rewire that brain pathway that tells you this is a scary situation and I need to run from it.
Yeah. Well, what's so interesting, another story is I was just meeting with a woman. She's probably in her upper 20s. And speaking of strengths, you and I are certified in the Gallup Strength Finder methodology. So I was working with her on her strengths, and she leads with relationship building. And a lot of her peers and coworkers lead with executing. And so she, talking about confidence, was telling me I'm relationship building and I don't have enough confidence to use my strengths in meetings or whatever it was. So as soon as she understood her strengths, that she was relationship building, and she understood, wait a minute, this is who I innately am and how I think, feel, and behave. Do you know that she's in a corporate session that I'm doing, and you know that from the May session to the June session, I just had a one-on-one with her yesterday, and she said, Sarah, my confidence has gone through the roof. I was like, oh my gosh, tell me what that looks like for you. And she said, I know myself now. I don't need to be like everyone else. And I can use my strengths in what I'm doing in my job. So I said, okay, great. What are you doing? I'm speaking up more in meetings. I'm giving my opinions more. I'm not afraid to talk to my boss about scary subjects that I used to, or conflicts in the workplace. I mean, it's just incredible how just understanding your strengths from a data perspective can help with this. So that leads into this next question that I had for you. What does confidence actually look like?
Well, I think it's data. Again, I don't think that you have to look at it as something that is an either or. I think it's both and. I think that to be confident, you I feel like that word is so, again, I read a book. I wish I could think of the book that I read recently, but it's about building up the evidence that you can. So just like the girl that you just or the woman that you just spoke of, she is building what I would call an evidence archive, that this is who I am. These are the things that I do because of who I am. So I'm relationship building. So I love to build connections with people. I love to be curious and ask questions and help people come together and create a collaborative environment. Whatever she's doing in those meetings is going to be evidence for her the next time that she can do it again. So maybe it's something like, you handled a hard situation, or you recovered from disappointment, or you had a difficult conversation with someone, you adapted, you led something, you figured something out, right? You were a problem solver, you showed resilience, you showed integrity. All of those things lead to you creating a stature or a belief system that includes, I'm confident. I'm confident in who I am. And we have to remember that criticism and threat, more strongly than success, are going to inhibit that. And you talked about that a little bit, but your brain is built for survival. It's not built for confidence. So we have to intentionally collect that evidence of our own capability. And that's where I think strengths help so much, because as soon as you read it, you automatically go, yes, I am good at those things. Like, that's how I approach
And I
it.
don't have to be someone
And I
else.
don't have to
Right.
go and do these other things, because that's not really who I am. And so your brain will, as you develop these positive, evidence-based information, you're going to start to tell yourself a better story about who you are. And that's where confidence really comes from. It's the story you tell yourself about yourself.
Absolutely. And that really hits home for me, because I think back to moments in my own career, like transitions or moments where I was genuinely unsure about something. And it wasn't a pep talk that got me through from a friend. I mean, sure, those work, right? But I had to get really clear on what I'd already done. Like, hold on, Sarah, pause for a second, get out of your own way, right? Let's think about everything you've done, everything I've navigated, and realizing that the person who got through those things, me, is still in the room, right? So I love to give people something that they can actually do and take away from this. So if someone's listening right now and they're heading into a job search or a big interview or career pivot, what is one thing or a couple things that they can do this week that actually builds real confidence, not just like the performance of it?
Totally. I love that. I love that. So what you're talking about is you don't need Sarah to become someone new. We need you to connect with who you already are. So I love this because if somebody listening wants some practical things to do this week, I would say this. Write down 3 moments from the last 90 days, like recent, right? Where you handled something difficult. Not perfectly, not impressively, nobody, shot up balloons or fireworks or anything, just honestly. And then next to each one, write yourself, journal a little bit and say, what does this reveal about me? What does this say about me? Like, I'm really good at X. Maybe it reveals resilience. Maybe it reveals adaptability or compassion, leadership or courage or consistency. You're looking for evidence of your character, not perfection. And I think that's really important. Like, let's talk about progress over perfection. And that could be a whole nother podcast. But I genuinely think that this exercise changes something because most people are walking around with a mental archive full of their failures and almost no accessible memory of their own strengths. So start with the last 90 days, write down 3 things you did well and what this reveals about you and see where you go from there.
I love it. And I'll add, the number one thing that I tell anyone I coach with is, and we have similar language to this, right? Is audit your evidence, right? And I even have written, one coach told me once, and I even have it on my wall, when I get into this state, and it doesn't even have to be in a job, it can be in your life. She had me write down in my journal and on a piece of paper, book of evidence. Like, Sarah, you're reeling over here from a confidence perspective. I want you to go back and use a book of evidence, which is very similar for what you're asking them to do. So same concept, just sort of different framing.
But you could do that quarterly, like just every 90 days, write down 3 things and what does it reveal about you and keep it in a separate notebook. And then you start to have that book of evidence. So before you're going to do anything that you feel, oh, I'm not sure I'm prepared or I'm not sure I'm confident to do this, then you go back to that book and you go, oh yeah, I remember who I am.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, I could talk for 3 more hours on this. I mean, you and I built 9 modules of this content, so we could literally talk for 12 hours. This is just the beginning. Molly and I have a lot more to say together, and we're going to keep showing up here to have exactly these kind of conversations, because here's what I believe. A PhD psychologist and someone who spent 25 years on the other side of the hiring table together, that's a perspective you're not going to find in a lot of places. And what I want to do is for you to have it. If this hit home for you, share it, send it with someone who needs to hear it, and make sure you're following so we don't miss the next one. Thank you for being here, and go live in your strengths. Thank you, Molly, for being here.
Thanks, friend.
Thanks for joining us. Now, take the momentum and share this episode with someone in your world who's ready to stop guessing and start building. For personalized one-on-one strategy, book your free consultation with Sarah at livingyourstrengths.com. New episodes drop every Monday, so hit follow and never miss a breakthrough. Now go live in your strengths. This podcast is filmed at the Make Your Day Richer studio and edited by Richard Wilmar.